So we're expecting a few more to join us, but we have some introductory comments. And so what we can do is we can let folks trail in as we get going. If I could have the next slide. We always begin in keeping with our traditions with an official land acknowledgement. Even though we're a year into meeting digitally, we still meet the spirit of being together by recognizing that today we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, which includes the Ojibwa, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. And we respect the long-standing relationships with First Nations people in this place, in the 100-mile Windsor-Essex Peninsula and the Straits, les Détroits of Detroit. If we can just have the next slide, what we'll do is we'll have a brief introduction from the folks who are leading this exercise. It's a quick little 1-minute video, and then we'll keep moving.
Hello. On behalf of all of us at the Windsor-Essex Regional Community Safety and Wellbeing Systems Leadership Table, we want to thank you for your interest in the development of our region's first ever Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Together, our goal is to build a community where everyone feels safe, has a sense of belonging, has access to services and opportunities, and can have their needs met across the region.
We want to hear from you. We want to understand what your priorities and concerns are for the safety and well-being of our community so that we can create a plan to advance the interests of all residents across Windsor and the County of Essex. So please make your voice heard by participating in our online survey,
or by registering for one of the virtual public meetings happening in each of the region's 8 municipalities. To get involved, visit us online at CSWBWindsor-Essex.ca. And thank you from all of us.
If we can just have the next slide, I'll take you through just some basic housekeeping while some other folks arrive. Firstly, I know we've been at this for almost a year now, so you're probably familiar with some of these suggestions. The most important thing is to mute yourself unless you're speaking, and the mute button looks like a little microphone with the red line through it. And you can either mute yourself on your phone or the button's usually on the bottom left hand of your screen. And don't worry if we hear some sound that's coming through of some crisis in the kitchen or something. We'll mute you to sort of keep there from being a disruption. But we will also certainly unmute you as soon as you have something to say. So we're all sort of partners in making sure that it's easy for everybody to hear and participate in this. And of course, please unmute yourself whenever you'd like to speak. But we just try and keep it as undisrupted as possible, recognizing that we all have to live our lives in the shared spaces we're living them in now. When it comes to the interactive portions of the session, I can tell you that with just a small group of us, it's going to be really easy to interact. We'll have as many breakouts as groups as we need to keep the numbers small based on the numbers who actually turn up. So you can signify that you'd like to say something either by raising one of these hands or by raising your little digital hand. That's the thing that looks like a little hand that's at the bottom of your screen. That's one of the reaction buttons. You can also just use the chat, and I see a number of you are doing that right now to raise questions. Those questions are all being answered by Lindsay, who's our tech wizard. If you need to get a message to Lindsay, just message in the chat CSWB Windsor, and that's her, and she can help you with anything that's going on. I would just note, our team will be monitoring the discussion, and we reserve the right to delete any comments or remove any participants who are making inappropriate comments. But look, and that's because this is a community safety session, and community safety starts here and now as far as we're concerned. But we also know that anybody who's giving their time to participate in this is here for all the very best reasons. And so we haven't had to do anything like that, and I shouldn't expect we will. So we just mentioned that to let everybody know this is a safe zone for sharing what you need to share. If you do require closed captioning, we have a closed captioner here. That's Erica. and she's able to provide that service. Just let Lindsay at the CSWB thing know, and we'll make sure that you get access to that service. And you can turn it on by hitting the little closed captioning button that's at the bottom of your screen. So I think that covers all the housekeeping stuff. Certainly, if you have any questions along the way, just let one of us know. If I can have the next slide, I'll just take you quickly through the agenda. We're now, of course, through most of the introductions and housekeeping. And if we can just have the next slide, I don't know if it's stuck. There we go. We're through most of the welcome and introductions. In just a minute, I'll be turning you over to one of my colleagues who will provide you with an overview of the community safety and well-being planning process. And we'll try and get through all of that in about 20-25 minutes or so. And then we'll go into breakout sessions where we'll be just asking you a whole series of questions about what you think contributes to safety in the community, what you think doesn't contribute to safety in the community, and what your recommendations are for what you think would improve overall safety and wellness in the community. So it really is an interactive session, and it's going to be a great chance for you to give us your direct input. Now, just by way of introduction, as you can see, my photo may not exactly be up to date in terms of the current hairstyles, but COVID has had a ravaging effect on all of us, and that's my contribution to the wreckage. But I am John Matheson. I'm a partner at Strategy Corp, and I'm leading this engagement for Strategy Corp, and I'm here with my colleague, Brian Teefy. Olivia isn't with us tonight. From the team inside Windsor and Workforce-Essex, tonight we have Leo Gill, and we have Michelle Sushu and Lindsay Rive, who I've introduced already. Now, if I could just introduce Leo, he'll be taking you through the introduction to the community safety and planning process. Leo's been working on this tirelessly for the better part of a year, and has been instrumental in putting together our initial assessment of the statistics, and he's been coordinating this huge team of about 95 different people from different agencies. So he is the guy to listen to on how the process is all working. Once he's done, we'll have a little bit of information that's specific to your community, and then we'll jump right into the small groups. So Leo, over to you.
Thank you very much, John, for the introduction. And thank you all for coming out tonight. We really do appreciate your time. I normally like to start off by just answering a few questions in terms of, what exactly this type of project is all about, and really answering the question, what is community safety and well-being planning? And overall, CSWB planning is truly about creating a collaborative approach to service delivery. One that really involves multiple sectors and community partners, and is focused on being proactive and preventative, all for the goal of addressing local priorities related to crime and complex social issues. And to do this, municipal and regional leaders are working together with partners from across several different fields with the goal of creating a community where everyone feels safe, has a sense of belonging, has access to services and opportunities, and can have their needs met. And what's really important about this, about these goals and the approach itself, is that it's recognizing that there are factors that influence our feelings of safety and well-being that go beyond whether a crime has occurred. It can be things like stigma, discrimination, and even a lack of access to resources. The approach also recognizes that for every risk, there's a community strength and asset, and that those should be our building blocks. We should be starting off with the great strengths that we have within our community. And finally, that everyone has a role to play in improving safety and well-being. And so another question that may come up is, why are we undertaking this project now? And really, over the past 2 decades, provincial data and research focusing on how to address some of today's more complex social issues have really been highlighting the importance of prevention, crime prevention, for instance, strengthening communities, and involving different sectors in terms of finding the solution to some of these longstanding challenges. And based on this research, in 2018, the provincial government passed legislation that required all municipalities to prepare and adopt a CSWB plan. But despite the fact that it's a mandated project, really the benefits come from a local level. And there's a lot of great benefits to that I'll be discussing very shortly. Next slide, please. But before we get there, I just want to, again, just explain a little bit about the framework that we're using here. And really, CSWB framework, it's saying that we can intervene in 3 different areas. At the top of these concentric circles here, the top circle is social development. And then the second circle is prevention, third, risk intervention, and in the middle of these concentric circles, the bullseye per se, is incident response. Commonly, when we think of safety interventions, we tend to focus on the center of the bullseye, at the incident itself, in that red area. And we tend to approach it from a policing or an emergency services perspective. But what research has been showing us is that first responders are being called to situations related to well-being that are symptoms of larger issues. It could be a mental health crisis, housing insecurity, for instance. And these are issues that first responders can't solve alone. It's important for us to be partnering and collaborating across those sectors. If we move up a layer to the risk intervention, that yellow layer, this is about focusing on reducing harm before it gets to the point of an incident. And this type of work is not usually about creating community-wide strategies, and instead focusing on providing wraparound type services to particular people in need, particular individuals in need. The layer above that is where we all kind of have a way to kind of be involved. And this is that prevention layer. So proactively identifying and addressing local risks before they escalate. And again, all community members, groups, and sectors have a role to play at this level. And then finally, at the very top, the social development layer is usually involving longer term investments and strategies to improve those larger scale issues like access to income, education, and quality housing, to name a few. And work in this layer involves us looking beyond the incident at the social causes and understanding that those causes need integrated and collective responses. So if we pull these concepts together, if instead of focusing on the bullseye, on the incident, we start at the social development layer, we start at top, then we can start building on protective factors and strengths within our community. We can emphasize prevention and risk mitigation strategies by using things like data to help guide us, and ultimately work to reduce the number of incidents we need to respond to by intervening before challenges become crises. Next slide, please. And so there are a number of different ways to do this. Next slide, Lindsay. And in terms of Windsor-Essex, the approach that we are taking is really, I think we moved a slide too forward. In terms of the Windsor-Essex approach, really the benefit of this is that we are doing a joint city-county approach. And while it is being developed through regional collaboration, the plan is really going to include appendices and data profiles for each municipality. And the intent here is to ensure that those local priorities from each municipality are identified, understood, and the strengths of each municipality are incorporated. So guiding this plan development are 2 major teams here, the leadership table as well as the enhanced sector network. The leadership table is made up of leaders from across multiple sectors like health and mental health, education, law enforcement, and public safety, to name a few. And the enhanced sector network is consisting of frontline staff and members from community organizations and committees that work alongside 8 historically underrepresented groups. And those communities include First Nations and Indigenous peoples, racialized persons, newcomers, youth, seniors, 2S LGBTQ plus folk, accessibility communities, and broader community groups that are connected with individuals with lived experience of housing insecurity or of substance use challenges. And they're helping us with narrowing down the scope of this project, or the range of this project, and really helping us by ensuring that we are really identifying priority risk factors, identifying strategies to reduce those risk factors, and setting measurable outcomes or goals to make sure that we know how we're doing as we're going along through the implementation part of this project, which would be the next phase after council endorses the plan itself. Next slide. And really in brief, in terms of what this plan will do, it's really aiming to take advantage of those existing community strengths, resources, and best practices to create proactive approaches to identified local risks. And as I mentioned beforehand, there are a number of benefits. A few of those are really ensuring that we have greater communication across our agencies and greater collaboration across our agencies and organizations within the region, having a better understanding, for instance, of local risks, and increasing our awareness and coordination and access to services for community members and vulnerable groups. Next slide. And lastly here, as with everything, because of COVID, the project was put on a pause for a brief point in time, but we relaunched the project in June 2020. And since then, we've been able to create a current state data report and an interactive map, and both the asset map, and both of those will be made public in the coming weeks. The other piece of that too is we'll talk a little bit about the data that we collected, but it's about making sure that we have different pieces of the puzzle to have a better understanding of some of the priorities and some of the strengths. So the data profiles is one piece, these virtual town halls, the online survey are another piece, as well as communicating with our municipal leaders and those in that Enhanced Sector Network group. And speaking of, with the ESN, with the Enhanced Sector Network group, we were able to connect and engage 96 frontline staff and representatives from existing committees and organizations, and really have them help us contextualize some of that data, from a regional perspective, but also from a local perspective. And that's going to really help us when we're trying to prioritize those community risk factors. Once we've completed this public consultation and have analyzed all the data, we'll then be developing the final report and submitting it to municipal and county councils for adoption. We expect the plan to be fully completed and made public by the end of the year. So with that, I'll go to the next slide. And if you have any questions about the process, I know there's quite a bit that I was discussing right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask a question. And if you'd like to ask a question by either raising your hand or sending a message in the chat, that'd be great.
Any questions for Leo? See any in the chat, so maybe we can head along and turn it over to Brian Teefy, who's going to give us a quick introduction to some of the findings in regard to your community.
Yeah, thanks, John, and thanks, Leo, for that overview. So what we did as the first part of our work with Leo and the team at Windsor-Essex is create a current state data report, which sort of was a bit of the baseline of the facts and stats that we could pull from various sources, StatsCan and your police service and other municipal services along a continuum of measures. And as Leo said, we're looking at more than just crime and police stats. We wanted to look at some of those underlying factors. So education, financial security, mental health and substance abuse, physical health, housing in neighborhoods, and given the pandemic, we're in the middle of COVID-19, we wanted to assess how that was impacting the community, as well as the plan is going to be finalized as we're coming out of this this pandemic. If we just go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about Lakeshore in particular. So the largest municipality in the region. Actually, Lindsay, if you just, the next slide, I think is a nice one to, this is the one I think I want to focus on. A large municipality, the 401 runs through it, which is, offers, traffic and other potential issues that are somewhat unique from other lower tier municipalities. The stats show a slightly higher rate of crime around property, violent crime, and traffic crime. But really, it's Ontario is generally very safe community. Lakeshore has good educational attainment, very low child poverty. In terms of population, a slightly higher rate of youth than some of the other lower tier municipalities in the region. I think I'll just wrap it up there, but you guys know your community well. I think this is we're going to take the information from the consultation and really, as Leo said, map out some details and facts that will help guide the forward-looking process on this plan for each individual municipality, and then build a plan that will collectively, as a whole, help address some of the community safety and well-being factors. So if we go to the next slide, What we really want to focus a lot of this time on is the breakout sessions with you, listening and hearing back from you. So we have about 30 to 45 minutes, I think a little bit on the longer side because we've run through this part nice and quickly. We've randomly assigned people to the breakout rooms, and there's a number of us that you've heard from already, and members of the Windsor team will be there to help facilitate and take notes on 5 questions. So we want to make sure everyone can contribute. Everyone will have a chance to share their thoughts. Once we're done, it's a really easy system on this webinar. If you haven't joined one before, we'll get asked to join back to the main group, and then each of the breakout sessions will share their thoughts and results together as a group, and we'll have a little bit of time to reflect as the larger group. And I think we're a fairly intimate group today, so there's lots of room to share your thoughts. A reminder, just the same as asking questions for this, for the larger group, raise your hand, be polite, and make sure everyone has a chance to speak. Don't forget to unmute and mute after you're done talking if there's any noise in the background. And you can use the chat function as well if you want to get down a thought that while someone else is talking, or that you feel like it is really important. Feel free to type that into, and we'll make sure we capture that in our notes. So if there's no questions about the breakout process, Lindsay can shift us all into the breakout rooms, and we can.
Looks like we got a question there from Bing.
Yeah, I got a question, Brian, just on your stats there where you were talking about the high level of crime and violence and traffic problems and whatever in Lakeshore. I really have to question that. We were rated the 12th safest community in all of Canada. And that sure don't mix with what you're just telling us now. So I just wonder if you could go into a little more depth on where you got those stats, because we take a lot of pride in being the 12th safest community, not only in Ontario, but in all of Canada.
Yeah, and I kind of stumbled over that point a little bit, Mayor, because only because in reality all of the communities in Windsor-Essex are very safe, and I think it may have just been a blip in the data from where you were to where you are. So I think it might have been just a bit of tracking in terms of increases, but from a very low level. So what I can do is I'll make sure I get that from the current state report, the specific data, and show you that. And we'll, as we finalize the report, we're going to make sure we frame that in sort of public documents very carefully, because as I said, I think it's going from all of the stats are from a very low crime level across the region. So, but thank you for that.